It's pretty wild to think that one of India's most valuable companies built its entire empire by being, well, deliberately boring. Seriously, it avoided all the hype, grew super slowly, and in the process just completely dominated its competition. Today, we're going to break down the secret sauce of DMart. So to really get what makes DMart so special, you've got to look at its biggest rival. Back in the early 2000s, two companies set out to change retail in India forever. They started at pretty much the exact same time in the exact same market, but their stories couldn't have ended more differently.
On one hand, you've got Big Bazaar, which launched in 2001. It became a household name almost overnight, but in the end, it was sold off after hitting major financial trouble. And on the other hand, there's DMart. It opened its first store just a year later, in 2002, grew quietly in the background, and is now worth over 2.5 lakh crore. Just incredible.
So here's the big question, right? They were playing the same game on the same field with the very same customers. So what on earth was the tiny difference that led to such a massive gap in results? Let's dive in.
Well, the answer doesn't really lie in some super secret, flashy strategy. Nope, it all starts with a deeply held philosophy. It's a mindset that values substance over style and consistency over just growing fast and taking on a ton of risk.
And you know what? This quote from DMart's former CEO, it just hits the nail on the head. He's basically admitting, hey, 90% of what we do is just standard retail stuff. But it's that other 10%, that tiny focused difference, that created pretty much all of their success.
So what does that 10% actually look like? Well, instead of big, flashy sales, they have everyday low pricing. No gimmicks, just reliable value you can count on. Instead of hype, they focused on consistency. And it's all captured in their 4RQC framework. It's simple. Have the right product that people actually need at the right price, always in the right quantity on the shelf, and make sure people have a quick checkout. I know, it sounds almost boring, but it is absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so we've got the philosophy down, but how did that actually play out in their strategy? Well, while all their competitors were in this mad dash to expand, DMart deliberately took a much slower path.
All right, this is where it gets really interesting. This is the playbook that made all the difference. It really just boils down to three simple, but totally brilliant and kind of counterintuitive principles. Own your stores, cluster your growth, and master your inventory.
You have to remember, back then, pretty much every retailer was obsessed with this idea of the asset-light model. The thinking was you lease your stores, especially in fancy malls, so you can expand as fast as possible without tying up a bunch of money. It was the popular thing to do, but man, was it risky.
And this is where you see that first huge split in the road. DMart just completely rejected that asset-light trend. They chose to buy and own their own properties. Now, yeah, it was slower and it took a lot more money up front, but it meant they weren't burning cash on crazy high rents. This was financial discipline over reckless speed, and it built them a rock-solid, debt-free foundation.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about what's actually on the shelves. DMart's efficiency here, it's legendary. And it all comes down to this one number, 16x. This right here represents their inventory turnover.
So what does that even mean? Inventory turnover is basically how many times a year you sell through your entire stock and replace it. DMart did this 16 times. Big Bazaar, a measly 4. And the reason is simple. DMart was laser-focused on fast-moving groceries, the stuff people buy every single week. Big Bazaar, on the other hand, got bogged down with slow-selling things like clothes, which just sat there tying up cash and warehouse space, starving the business of the money it needed to run.
Okay, so DMart's whole slow and steady thing, it totally worked. They won that first battle. But, and this is a big but, the war for Indian retail is nowhere near over. Today, DMart is facing a completely new set of challenges from competitors who are way bigger, richer, and faster.
That's right, the old rival might be gone, but the entire retail landscape has been completely redrawn. DMart's proven playbook is now being tested against a new generation of titans who have way deeper pockets and play by a different set of rules. And just look at the scale we're talking about now. It's staggering. In a recent quarter, Reliance Retail's revenue was 5 times bigger than DMart's. And the store count? I mean, come on. We're talking over 19,000 stores versus about 400 for DMart. This is a battle of a completely different magnitude. It's a whole different league.
And why is everyone fighting so hard? Well, it's because the prize is just enormous. The Indian retail market is on track to hit an astounding $2 trillion by 2032. Everybody, from global giants to local startups, wants a piece of that pie.
And the absolute heart of that massive market, it's right here, food and groceries. We're talking over 63% of all retail spending in India. This is DMart's home turf, right? It's the source of their success, but it's also exactly why the battlefield is so ferocious in this space right now.
And as if these giant physical retailers weren't enough, there's another huge challenge: the explosion of quick commerce. You've got players like Blinkit and Zepto promising to get you your groceries in minutes, not hours. This is a direct challenge to DMart's whole value proposition, especially since their own online platform, DMart Ready, has taken a much more cautious, slow-burn approach.
So all of this brings us to the big, final question about DMart's future. The very strategies that made them a powerhouse are now being put to the ultimate test.
Look, DMart proved that a boring, disciplined strategy could totally crush a flashy, aggressive one. But the rules have changed. You've got rivals who are bigger and startups who are way, way faster. So the real question is, in this new era of Indian retail, can slow and steady still win the race?